Welcome to the April 16th, 2025 Shaker Lane Building Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is to approve the March 19th, 2025 meeting minutes. Are there any comments or suggested edits? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second. A roll call vote. Steve Moore?
Aye.
Steve Venuti?
Steve Venuti, yes.
Ryan?
Yes. Ryan, yes.
Bob?
Bob, yes.
Mike?
Mike, yes.
Michelle?
Michelle, yes.
And Kelly, yes. Motion carried. Item 2 on the agenda, review and approve invoices. We have a TTH invoice for basic services, the amount of $13,087. Studio G basic services, $43,500. Studio G additional services, $4,181, for a total of $60,768. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the invoices? Steve, did you have a comment, or Steve Venuti?
Nope.
Nope, okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the invoices as presented for a total of $60,768.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Steve Moore?
Yes.
Steve Venuti?
Steve Venuti, yes.
Ryan?
Ryan, yes.
Bob?
Bob Roma, yes.
Mike?
Mike Scuduto, yes.
Michelle Kane?
Michelle Kane, yes.
And Kelly is yes. Motion carried. Item 3A, schematic design update, life cycle cost analysis review. I assume it's Mary Lee.
Yes, so the life cycle cost analysis, I want to do that as well as a general design update. And I suspect that the life cycle cost analysis conversation might get lengthy. So would it be all right if I just ran people through a quick design update before we move to that?
Sure.
All right, awesome. So I will share my screen. Let's see, hold on a second. All right, am I sharing it full screen?
Yes.
Good.
Okie dokie. So this is the site plan as it stands right now. We have been tweaking the location of the building down to the foot because we're trying to maximize the buffer between our property line and this neighbor over here, as well as the property line between this neighbor down here and our building. So the design still has a separate bus loop and car loop. Everything is still in the general location of where we've been talking all along, but this is an updated version. Does anybody have any questions? All right, I'll move it right along. This is just a closer look at the floor plans. The entrance is over here at this pink arrow. As you come into this small lobby, there is admin over here. That's your security vestibule. This is where Michelle could come out and immediately greet families as they come in the door, really making it feel warm and welcoming. Over here, we have the cafeteria and gym, which are going to be the spaces available for after hours use. And the entrances to those are right here. So we can control access so that it's only limited to these areas after hours. We have the pre-K neighborhood over here on the left. We have the kindergarten neighborhood over here on the right. And at the core of the building, we have some media center spaces, which are designed to be broken up a little bit, but able to use wide openings to make it combined to feel like one larger space and really making it feel like it's the heart of the school. There is a wheelchair accessible learning stair in here at the top of the platform. There will be a lot of self-seating and some books for kids to just chill and read and take part in the media center class. We have access along this corridor out to the play area. The circulation right now is the kids go from their neighborhood out the neighborhood stair to the play area. Then they come in for lunchtime, and then they go back to their neighborhood. So we have really nice circulation here where we can get a lot of kids moving through the school without having a lot of collisions and traffic jams. Down here at the back of the gym, we have adaptive PE, we have some staff spaces, and we have a corridor leading directly out to some outdoor PE space, which would be fenced in so that the gym classes can have direct and fast access to the outdoors rather than trying to pack all the kids up and taking them all the way down to the field, which, they're little, it takes a long time. By the time they do that, their class is half over. So this is a way to make it really accessible and flexible for gym classes. On the second floor, we have first grade and second grade, as well as art and music, plus a small balcony here overlooking the media center. This is an opportunity to place some additional bookshelves, maybe a little bit of little ways for kids to peek down and see what's down below, which is really appealing for this age group. We have in the center here the creation station. This is the production component of the Imagitorium spaces. This is where there's going to be the laser cutter, the 3D printer, other equipment like that. This room is lined with windows so that students can really look in and see what's going on. And then the instructor can be inside operating the equipment so the kids can see their stuff being made, but not interact with the equipment. We have an academic suite and clinical suite up here with close proximity to each other, as well as to the stairs leading down to the admin space. A little more detail in the dens. They all have enough cubbies for all of the students in the grade, plus a few spares to accommodate future growth. This MCS is the Media Center satellite. We took square footage from the Media Center and pulled out a few pieces so that every grade level can have a dedicated book area in the den. This is a space where the Media Center instructor could come to the dens and have the lesson right here for the students, rather than always having the students travel to the Media Center. This rectangle here is a skylight space. It is enclosed for sound purposes, but it lets light through all the way down to the first floor, bringing natural daylight into this deep part of the building that doesn't have access to windows. Generally, this is a very compact space. We have eliminated much of the corridor space that a traditional school layout would see. And what you get instead is the ability to use every square foot of these areas for learning purposes. Does anybody have any questions before I move on, or comments?
Mary Lee, is this a discussion on life cycle cost?
This is right before we get into life cycle costs, because that might take a long time, and I want to make sure that we get through this quickly before we move on to that discussion.
Got it, thanks.
Okay. Next, we wanted to talk a little bit about the exterior of the building. This version you see down here is sort of a naked building. It doesn't have any specific materials applied to it yet. That is a conversation that we are having right now, but we wanted to tell you the materials that we are looking at. We will be choosing them based on the cost effectiveness, as well as their longevity, ease of maintenance, and durability. So right now we are looking at having a majority masonry building, so using these, and then we would be using, in very limited spaces, some metal panel as accents. We have a few areas of large windows, but we believe that we can do that by way of something called a window wall, which is a lot less expensive than using curtain wall. It's something that we've used on other schools in the past, so we have experience with that. It's a way to get the big windows that we like while also controlling costs. So we'll be keeping you updated as we move into starting to select specific materials for the exterior. Any questions on this? I will add that these estimates were from the end of last year. And once we get an estimate and once we start working with the construction manager, we can continue to get the most updated information on these materials so that we are aware of what things are costing.
Yeah, the brick isn't that cheap anymore. Even
Things are changing. Yep.
Union's like $100 because there's no one who does it.
Mark has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that this update is a design update as Studio G continues with their schematic design process. They're in the middle of doing this, and we meet as a committee once a month. They have the subcommittee people that they meet with and update things on as well. But we just wanted to make sure the committee was just updated on where they are in the process, because we're moving towards the end of June for schematic design submission, cost estimating first week in May. So middle of April is a good chance just to update everybody where they are.
Thanks, Rick. Any questions on this? All right, now let's get into it. The life cycle cost analysis. We sent over the full document, which is a pretty tough read if you're not familiar with the terms. So this is the same familiar chart that we looked at before, but with the added information of the cost and the annual maintenance costs. So I will just leave it up to you all to discuss this or ask any questions.
Does anybody want to, or would like to start this discussion? I know we received quite a bit of information from a PMBC member. Very, very well done. Appreciated the questions. I'm not sure whether people have had time to digest the questions. Thank you to Studio G for getting back with some answers. The last time we talked about this last meeting, I believe we were leaning toward option 2, and maybe that's a good place to start the conversation. Mark, when do we need to have a decision made by?
Schematic design is due at the end of June. They're proceeding with using option 2 as the basis of design unless we're told otherwise. I mean, this is the effective analysis between options 1 through 4. And some of the questions that Tim Harvey, which I agree were very, very well put, and GGG's already responded to most of them, and I think it'll be interesting to see Tim's response, but I think they covered most of the questions that he was asking. So they're proceeding with designing based on option 2, unless this first analysis isn't showing anything incredibly different than I think what we expected, especially with the initial investment and costs at the bottom, based on what we're looking to have for an HVAC design. So they're Marilee or Steve Mishner, correct me if I'm wrong, GGG is proceeding with the option 2 as the design.
Yeah, you're correct. Where even though schematic design isn't done until June, we are sending our package to the estimators at the beginning of May. And that means that we need time to have all of our information coordinated with our consultants. So sooner than that. The sooner that we have a final decision, the better, but we have been proceeding as though option 2 were the choice.
Okay.
So the annual maintenance costs, that's operating costs or electricity, et cetera, things like that, that's included?
That is just maintenance. I don't believe that is the operating costs. I think that may be called out as a separate column in the actual LCCA.
Yeah, I believe that's in there under the breakout of all the options. That information's there, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, page 12, if anybody has it, I'm digging it out.
Well, Ryan, I'm excuse me, looking for a bit of advice. I'm certainly prepared to test the waters, so to speak, see if we're ready to make a decision. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, the question I have for Marilee is that for the option 3, is that net of the IRA money available?
No, this 10.92 is assuming that the IRA is not realized. it would be 10.92 minus 2.78 if we do get the IRA credit. So that would become the least expensive option. However, it's a tax credit, not a discount off the top. So you would still be paying the 10.92 and then getting this money back.
So, that's probably material. I don't know enough about the IRA program. I know we've been approached by our OPM on the center in Shattuck Street about pursuing some of that. But, this may be, this may be something we maybe need even more information on, because under the current circumstances that we're under from our federal government, whether or not the IRA credit would still be something, say, when we break ground, is even still going to be available. So, so I don't know if anyone in the team has any input or thoughts on that, because it's one thing to put the money up, to upfront the money first time up front, but then to have to, if we're getting something like that, nearly $3 million back, it may be worthwhile to look at.
So how would that work with the MSBA? So on each of these things, it says additional 3% from MSBA achievable. I assume it's the extra 3% just for these scenarios and not the entire project, right? Or is it the entire project?
This would be the MSBA doesn't really care one way or the other if you do geothermal or you get the IRA tax credit. The MSBA 3% is based on reaching certain energy efficiency goals, which options 1 through 3 could very much do. Option 4 is achievable if you also install a PV system and make the system electric ready. The cost shown here reflects including those things. And then the IRA federal tax credit would be something that the district and town pursues separately and doesn't need to get the MSBA involved. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark.
But the 3% from MSBA is just on these options. It's not the entire project, is what I'm saying.
It's the 3% would apply to the entire project.
Oh, so we get an extra 3% for every.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to clarify, that would be 3% on the allowable items.
Yes, of
Yeah.
the things that the MSBA reimburses, their reimbursement rate would be an additional 3%.
Okay.
Suresh, you want to just chime in on that, please?
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to confirm, that yes, it'll be 3% over and above whatever your current your reimbursable rate is. Let's say your current is 50, that'll increase to 53%.
Yep.
So if I look at option 3 and compare it to 2, with the reimbursement, if it was in existence, we would still be at about the same cost. Is that correct? Other people see it that way as well?
But would it change anything with the additional 3% too that we just talked about? I mean, that's I think I'd like to see what those numbers look like that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. It might.
So the MSBA does not finalize the amount of money they're going to give you until the end of schematic design, but they say on their website where they describe the additional 3% that's possible, that the average project can expect to get back around $3 million. So if you look at the difference between option 2 and 3 of the final costs down here, you're about breaking even.
Suresh, could you weigh in on, is it, when we look at these options on here, is that extra 3% really a criteria for that, or is it really just like an additional cost of a system just because, let's say, option 3 is more expensive than option 2? Does that really have a material effect on that 3%?
Well, it will have because your construction costs will go up.
Mhm.
So, but again, if keep in mind, MSB also has a cap of what rate they will qualify you for per square foot. So you'll probably be above that. So you pretty much are not going to be able to realize the full 3%. You'll realize parts of it. So when you start doing the math, only biggest advantage would be if you're able to get the IRA credit, which, like Ryan said, with the current, administration, we don't know which way are we going. And that's do we want to spend the $2 million now and hope to get $3 million back? That's a choice, you have to make. The cost between the two of them is the actual cost because there's no maintenance difference between the two of them, and they are pretty much the same. So it's just a question is, what's better for the environment and which way you want to go with that? And that could also be a call. Option 3 is little better on the environmental than option 2 in my mind. So that's the question too.
Well, if I could just add to that, option 2 is also likely to get 3 million back.
True.
Because option 2 would be, would likely satisfy the requirements of MSBA for that additional reimbursement. So I do think that when one is considering the entire project and the unknowns of both whatever tariffs might be coming, there are opportunities. I think that the risks involved with not getting funding are worth strong consideration by the group.
Yeah,
For protecting the overall budget of the project itself.
that's a good point. And this would be a federal reimbursement as well, which raises red flags for me.
That's the rub.
Yeah.
I'll just say that we'll share with the committee. Senator Townsend here, he has some relative new information concerning the IRA and what the forecasts will be for that. And I will share with everybody, hopefully before a week's end. Ground source heat pumps, being kind of a renewable resource is something that seems like it'll be something that'll continue as opposed to whatever else was part of the Inflation Reduction Act. But again, there's no guarantee. We are designing a system that needs to be designed by the end of June for schematic design before we move out. So a decision really needs to be made. And once we move and get the funding agreement from the MSBA, then there's a year before the documents are done through DD and construction documents before we bid. What happens within that time frame, no one knows, obviously. But I'll share information that we just recently, I think, received this week that may help, guide us through making a decision like this.
Okay.
So did I understand from Steve Mitchner that the IRA is available for option 2?
No.
What I meant was the additional 3% that one could hope to get from the MSBA. That would be available for option 2 as
Okay.
well.
Got it. Okay.
So it's that 3% from the MSBA, I think, is not as of an important criteria in this system decision as other things.
So to the group, is there any more information that you need before you're comfortable making a decision?
I think I'd like this re-looked at, because I'm not clear where the 3% breaks are with this. I'm glad that the IRA tax credit there is available, but I like maybe Mark's going to have some more information about that. I'm not trying to drag my feet, but if we're talking about with the credits, that the option 3 can be just as right around the same price, or if not less, because my presumption is there any? Let me ask the question this way: for option 2 and option 3, are the operating expenses any different?
not
Option-
according to the engineers, the same maintenance cost. The
Maintenance
operating
the
cost
same.
is something we have to find out from,
Right.
but the other thing would be, Ryan, just to add to that, would be to everyone, right now, the schematic design is where we present it to MSBA and saying, this is what we are going forward with. You can always scale back, you cannot scale up. So keep that in mind. So if you go with option 3, let's say, and the price for construction cost, for argument purposes, is $90 million versus $88 million. You're applying for $90 million, total project budget is based on $90 million of construction cost. So everything goes from there. If you choose not to use it and go down to option 2, there's no penalty. MSBA will just cut back their share, but you cannot go up from option 2 to option 3 later on.
Okay.
That's a good
That's it.
point.
Yeah.
Ryan, there are utility costs in the life cycle, in the expanded life cycle analysis. I think the difference between the two is just under 20,000 a year annual electric cost difference between 3 and 2.
And 3 is $20,000 less?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that that makes sense because you've got but it takes $2 million of capital cost to get to those benefits.
And then presumably, Steve, that's why the incentives are there to
absolutely
to want to encourage you to do that. Yes.
Yeah.
So
And also Mr. Tim Harvey's comments on some of the systems that are currently being designed. GGD is open to potential value engineering, potential changes on costs associated with that, the options and questions that he had too. So that's something to keep in mind as well. It's just about 7:30, folks, so we got a half hour.
During the sustainability workshop, we mentioned that there is a consultant available who works with districts to help them figure out their way around these incentives. So that may be a research that you want to reach out to before you make a final decision. This Undaunted K-12.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think what we're going to do is obviously wait till next meeting. It would be nice if we were ready to make a decision at our next meeting. The information needs to be finalized so they can move forward with the schematic design and have it done by the end of June.
Well, we next meeting is, I think, May 21st.
Mhm.
We're putting in cost estimates at the beginning of May. So and again, the basis of design is option 2, because that was what was approved prior. So if we go ahead and change that to option 3, then we're going to have to take a step back and redesign and schematic design in order for them to get the right estimate numbers for option 3. So I mean, I'm hoping to get the information to you tomorrow or Friday at the latest for the IRA or whatever else is out there. And I mean, we may have to have a quick side meeting with the subgroup to make an approval here, because we need to keep on track schedule wise.
Good point. Yeah.
I think it's just we have to understand, I understand the IRA may be a little bit of a roll of the dice, but it's, I mean, ultimately, if this helps us, have a cheaper project with, a more sophisticated HVAC system, then it seems like a win-win. But I guess I have to look at the numbers and see it, and then
True.
Again, I'm a little unclear about how the 3% changes anything too. So
Yeah. I mean,
otherwise I'm ready. Option 2 looks fine.
Yeah. And I don't, my own perspective, I don't feel comfortable having a subcommittee make this decision. I think it needs to be a full committee decision. So
Option 3, you're also buying an extra 10 years too.
that's true.
Replacement cost.
I mean, I'd be willing to have another meeting if necessary.
Yeah,
It's a big question.
Just to mention that we may have to do that.
But for this, you can have we can do a meeting just as a one-off for this, for
Sure.
this topic, and So it's just really important in terms of not only for the overall cost of the project, but also trying to get buy-in on the sustainability side of things too. That I think it's going to be a key part of this project, getting support at town meeting.
Mary Lee, forgive me, I didn't totally dive into the details on option 3 that GGD provided. Did they talk about number of wells that are needed and like all of that information, or is it more of a 10,000 foot level kind of review?
They got pretty detailed. I'm not certain if they spoke about the number of wells, but I'm wondering, would it help our situation if when we sent this out for estimating, we carried a basis of design and then we asked them to price out the other option as an alternate? Do we have
Great idea.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we need to talk to our consultant to see the implications for some redesign that would have to happen for that, but that would buy us some more time to research this.
No, that's a great suggestion. Yeah.
I think that's because the context, I think this group will need the context of the overall building
Yep.
and project cost to be able to decide if the increase of that level in capital cost is palatable for the community.
Suresh?
The only thing I would like to add caution is don't want to have an add alternate, because the moment you put an add alternate, MSB automatically assumes that the town is paying for it. They're not participating one penny into it. So that's why I want to have a caution there, not as an add alternate. It should be, estimate A or estimate B, and you take one of them and say, let's move on to SD, not here's an alternate add. So be cautious about that.
It might be just informational at this point. We may not term it as an add alternate for the project. We're just trying to gather the information.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Thank you, Suresh.
So it sounds like we're going to just have to get the information we need, have a meeting prior to May 21st to make a decision. Is that correct? Because from what I'm hearing, the suggestion we just had really may not work. So we're going to have to make a decision by having an additional meeting to do so.
Well, we'll try to provide you with the IRA information and any other questions you may have by the end of this week. Next week is a vacation week, but not everybody's out, so you guys can review that information with people in our office, Suresh, Matt, everybody, and then talk about potentially having another meeting before we send the documents out on the first week. I think, what do we say, May 5th, Mary Lee, that week? Or
May 5th.
So, it's rushed a little bit, but I agree that if there are potentials for making option 3 a reality, we should really understand everything about that versus option 2. So let's pull that information together and share it with everybody, and hopefully we'll get a clear direction. But I think the fallback is we ask the cost estimators to proceed with basis of design option 2, but give us a sense of what option 3 might cost.
Okay, so we need a meeting during the week of May 5th. Is that correct?
I'd say the last week of April, because we're hoping to submit to the cost estimators the week of May 5th. So
Wednesday, April 30th.
Well, whatever works for everybody that week. I know there's other conflicting meetings. There's 5 Wednesdays in April this year, so maybe that's an open night for everybody.
Well, let me ask this to the group. If we plan on having a meeting Wednesday, April 30th, do we have any conflicts?
No conflict with PMDC.
Perfect.
Okay.
Then why don't we pencil it in for that night?
Might as well. Perfect.
Get the information for you before the end of the week. Contemplated back and forth questions, answers the following week, and then a decision can be made on the 30th. Great.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything else, Mary Lee, under item 3? Draft presentation, obviously.
Nope, that was it for our end.
Did you want to quickly talk about the update on the soil testing? I know you showed the plan, but is there any quick updates on that? You showed the site.
I mean, for option 3, that was it. That's all we have. I still have the May 6th presentation draft.
Okay, let's go to the draft.
Okie dokie, that's me again. Okay. So this is the agenda as it stands right now. It's just based on the slides that we go through. starting off with Michelle speaking to why a new school is needed, recognizing that some of the people at this Q&A session may not have heard any of the prior information, so they really need sort of a start from scratch type of presentation. Then describing who is working on this project, who the MSBA is, a little bit about just how this works. So on this slide, we want to alleviate people's concerns that the MSBA funding is not subject to being snatched away, regardless of what happens on a federal level. This money has already been earmarked for this project. So if it passes town vote, then we get the money from the MSBA.
Is that the last bullet? Like MSBA has already funded their portion of the project? Or what? I don't that gets a little. I just want to be clear on what we're telling town meeting on that one.
Yeah, and there's this first line, and then there's the last line, sort of reiterating it in different words. But if there's stronger language that we should use, I can just change it.
We might want to just say not maybe already funded, that they will fund. MSBA will fund, this project.
Already funded sounds like
They already funded like the money.
We have the money in hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You don't, so yeah, I like the change.
Yeah, the MSBA will be funding this project. We understand the concern that's been communicated that this may not be available. So we just want to reiterate that the money will be available.
Yeah. And I did read the other day that MSBA recently granted a school district more money for the build that they're currently doing, which I think is a good thing to mention, that despite the discussions about the economy and trying to predict, which is impossible, they are holding true to their commitment to fund projects as much as possible.
You may want to change that to the MSB will partially fund this project, because somebody read that now, they figure they're going to fund the whole project.
That's a good point. And Mary Lee, today we talked about the first slide. Michelle and I will do that presentation together.
Okay. All right, so then the next slide describes the process, and I call out a couple key points here. The cost estimate information that we have now is pretty outdated. It's from October, and many things have changed. So that will be available before the town votes on it, so people will be able to make the most educated choice. And then the MSBA finalizes their contribution as well before town votes. So there's no question about Littleton's share of the project. Then we'll describe again the voting process, how it has to first pass the special town meeting by 2/3. And then later that week, if it does pass, it goes to the entire town to vote by ballot. And that is on a Saturday. And hopefully that allows a lot more people to get out and vote. All right, so this is a new slide that we've not spoken about before, talking about what specifically will happen if this does not pass town vote. I've seen a couple of projects recently where people in the town did not understand really what was at stake and thought that they could just redesign it a little bit, reduce the scope a little bit, and then go back and still get the money. And that's just not how it works. So if there's any other detail to add to this slide or any revisions, we can make that now.
One of the things, Marilyn, we were talking about, Steve Mark, regarding the existing building, having some sort of estimate about what this would cost. We talked about, or you talked about the cost of modular buildings and things of that nature. Is there anything with a highlighted section maybe you could flesh out for us?
Yeah, I'll start working on that.
I've got another point a little bit further in the presentation that specifically talks about modulars. Oh, wait, here it is. The bottom bullet point, sorry. There we go.
Well, the modules are $450 a square foot, so I'm not sure how big the modular units are. I think they're 900 square feet or 1,200 square feet or
Yeah.
something like that, so.
And if we take a look at the increase in square footage approved by MSBA, we would need another 10,000 square feet. So that would give you something to do a rough calculation on.
So again, I think the emphasis needs to be, if it doesn't pass, it doesn't preclude the town from going after it again. It's just a very long process. And in the interim, what do you do with your educational plan? What do you do with the current buildings? That's how do you Band-Aid it? Do you, $44 million, do you add modular classrooms? Because it could take 7 to 10 years going back through the process again, starting at the beginning. So I think those are the two big points we need to emphasize on this slide.
So the 44 million isn't a total renovation, is it?
That's just
That's
the
just-
code upgrade.
That's just to meet current code. That's
So
just-
could you put a bullet point in there that the renovation alone would be, I think it was 80 million, wasn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that number. I'm not sure where that came from because I went back and looked at the estimates and the code upgrade option was 44 million for the total project costs.
You may want to put in there, it's 44 million without any MSBA reimbursement.
Correct. I was just going to say that that's all on the town. That's nothing from the MSBA.
There's none of these, the modulars, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. No, nothing.
So the modular units to add 10,000 square feet is about $4.5 to $5 million.
I think probably have to throw in some extra for services and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Possibly.
Got to
For sure.
connect. You got to connect those things, and they need everything. We've we've put some modular classrooms during COVID to an existing school that wanted to expand, and you have to have fire alarm in those things, getting the electricity to them, so that there's a substantial utility cost.
How many square feet is that?
That'd be 10,000 square feet at $450 a square foot.
Okay, so that's
It's
not
not
$5
$5 million each, it's 5 million, additional 5 million just to add 10,000 square feet.
Right.
Plus,
And maybe you don't need the 10,000 square feet per se, depending on what you need to do, but it's just letting them know that this is, if it doesn't pass, this is the trajectory that the school may have to go down and the town.
Significant cost, yeah.
Just FYI, 7:45, so 15 minutes, folks.
And if I can add one more thing to the 5 million, also the maintenance cost. You have, that goes into your operating budget now for the maintaining those modulars, both operationally as well as, general maintenance.
Mhm.
So to Steve Venuti's point, I think we take out the each. Okay. I guess it was Steve Mark's point.
Yeah, just take out the each.
After the estimated 5 million. There you go.
Could you imagine? So for the number of modulars, actually, if we're talking 10,000 square feet, the 900 square foot modulars would be for grades 1 and 2, and the 1,200 would be for kindergarten. The kindergartens would need toilets, so you need the plumbing. So we would be looking at 10 or 11 modulars somehow crammed onto the site.
Right.
I really think it's just showing bullet points on this kind of loses it. If there was, an overhead shot of the current building, and now you're talking, 10 modulars around, where do they go? What space are we losing on the existing building? Excuse me. And then you show more in a graph type of thing or a table type of thing.
Table, yeah.
Here's our costs. Here's the items. Here's the cost. Here's a total. And then you have a total down at the bottom that you can compare against what we're doing now and the net cost of the building, $70-something million that we're thinking now. That's the bogey that we have.
Yeah, that's a good point.
With the kicker saying that we
Great
haven't
idea.
solved any problems.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, great idea, Steve.
Yep.
Reformatting on that. And then add a diagram. I think that's a great idea because it's going to look crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're gonna either give up the back playground area, and then if you give up the playground area, then you gotta install a new playground someplace else, and that's another $250,000 to $500,000 for a new playground.
And I got
There's
little kids.
no simple
having
place
go
to put it
outside in the
either.
Snow. Right, exactly.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, the grading is a real challenge for all those, like getting them to be accessible.
Mhm.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is going around in all those Facebook things now. Just put modulars in. Concord did it. Why can't we do it?
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Yeah.
a point about
we-
that, it does not solve the educational requirements because one of
Yeah.
the sore points for the building is that there's no way to give students the support that they need. Like that's this photo right here of the desks in the hallway
Yeah.
or this little table in a closet trying to give students the extra support they need. That you don't get that just by adding classroom size modulars.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's subpar. I mean, it's really just in desperation that you use
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably the key to the entire presentation and getting support for it is showing that it really doesn't work.
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding among people who went to school a while ago, including myself, that a classroom is a classroom and all the kids get all the help that they need in that classroom. And that's just not how things are done anymore. So I think we'll reiterate that. I can put in those photos again, blow them up a little bit bigger so that people can really understand what we're talking about here. And this actually might be a place where Kelly or Michelle, you could chime in again to speak to that.
Sure.
Well, I think a quick graphic showing the site and the potential of number of modules and then all the information that is going to support that, I think is good. If you guys get a draft together in the next few days or next week or something to share with everybody, they can kind of make comments. We're at 10 minutes of, so if we can
All right.
move along.
So then giving people a design update about what it is that they would be getting. So again, just a quick run through the site and the circulation for buses and cars, the new site access over here, and the location of the building in relation to the existing building, which is down here.
Marilee, what you showed earlier. Oh, here we go. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll shut up. I'll shut up.
Sorry. Every time
You took 1 minute.
So then we'll show what it looks like from the outside, and then we'll show this concept, what it looks like from the inside. Hopefully by May 6th, we'll have a little bit more detail to show on this with a few materials applied, but we don't want to get too specific at this point. We're not choosing colors or anything by any means until right before we order the material, right? So just enough to give people the idea, this is what it's going to look like. This is what your money is paying for. We're going to redo this rendering and take the balcony off because that has already been VE'd.
Can I just ask a question? I know the proposed building form that I know there's no exterior. You showed that option earlier. Is it? This is a question to the group. Would we be better off not showing that because people might look at it and be like, "A yellow school looks so bland." I'm sorry, but I just have to ask the question.
Yeah, maybe we need to dress it up a bit.
I mean, like the bottom one, I think is a sort of sense, but I'm just and I understand completely, Marilee, what you're doing on the top one, but it's something
Okay,
to-
we can certainly do a couple different options. It's really easy for us to just make a quick switch to show materials or not show materials. So we'll do a couple versions and then you guys can decide once you actually see it.
Yeah, I think we mentioned before, at this point, outside of the number one issue of cost, I think at this point, people want to see what it may look like.
Okay.
So we can tell them that this is still being developed. This is more volumetric and, you know, the size of it based on what you're seeing in floor plans, 2 stories, you know, this is how the entrance may look. I don't know if you guys have a fly through capability to do something like that, just to, you know, show the volume of the school as it sits on the site. But yeah, I think it needs to be reiterated that it's not just, you know, fully designed yet and what the materials are going to be. If you can add something, that's fine. But
Yeah,
I
we
think
can do
people are
that.
curious to what it's going to look like as well.
Okay. And then we get into Steve Venuti's content here. Steve, we changed this cell right here to show a percentage from the MSBA rather than a dollar amount. The MSBA really doesn't like us getting too specific with that at this point. So if anybody cares to do the math, they are free to do so, but we're not making promises on behalf of the MSBA by doing it this way.
Is that
And this
30
may be-
to 35% range include the extra 3% or?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure. Suresh or Mark?
No, that's typical. So it could go up to 38 and beyond. So
Okay.
that maybe is a little piece, a little asterisk on the bottom.
Okay.
I don't mean to be a picky point here, but it's really MSBA is a grant program, not a reimbursement program. So it should really say estimated MSBA grant 30-35%. And then I wouldn't put a number on the Littleton cost because we don't know that yet. That should be the same percentage.
It's
right?
all estimated. You have to put a cost to it in order to.
Yeah, I just, you know how people are when they see numbers.
But I think what we're getting is
The
people,
numbers have been out there.
Yeah.
people are looking at the total number and not taking into account the grant, and it's becoming problematic.
So this cell here really leads into Steve's next slide, where he really gets into the numbers. And then Steve, I added a QR.
Yeah, I
code
like that.
so
That was a
people
nice
can go
touch.
directly to that.
That's awesome.
I like that it's green too, like money.
No red, no orange.
On the 3% question, Suresh, you've talked before about like there is a maximum percent that we could hope to get. What's the comfort level on that number? If we go back to that last slide, are we still in that comfort level even if everything goes well and the extra 3% is given? Is that 35% number conservative at this point? Is it good?
It's good, but you know, that's why the 30 to 35% is like the range. You gotta have the range there. And I think if I might, so while we got it on the next one, on the next slide there, you have the net bond amount. The better net bond amount will be the full bond amount the town has to borrow, but then they get reimbursed as they go along. So you have to approve the full bond amount at the town meeting as well as at the special election, and then you get monies against that. So you're not borrowing the full money, but you're getting money, funds from the MSBA. But the bond amount has to be the full amount.
Can you go back to the previous slide for a sec? Could you switch it to a range again?
Yeah.
30 to 35, because the 35% doesn't work with the math. I mean, it's.
You put a range in, at least that's covered.
Yep.
So the
then,
town has to bond for 104.
We have to approve 104.
Yeah.
Got it. Good.
Yeah.
So when you are talking about this amount here, the 64 million, if we compare that 64 million to the cost of the 44 million of just doing code upgrades.
It do actually be the 74, because we wouldn't get the 5 because we're not, we'd be issuing debt, so it's part of the same, and then we have that 6 million be set aside. So yeah, 63.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
We would have that $11 million to use.
So Steve, I would just leave it up to you then if you want to refer back to that 44 million when comparing that to this. All right, then. Next slide is speaking out what we are doing to control costs. A lot of times if people aren't familiar with a building project, it's easy to look at a building and say, oh, that looks expensive because they use such and such material, when the materials is such a small part of what goes into this. And so we want to inspire confidence in people that they have a lot of teams of people looking out for them and making sure that we're controlling costs as much as possible.
We have a attendee who has his hand up. Do we want to let him ask a question at this point in time?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Rob Rounds, go ahead.
Okay, I just unmuted. Thank you. Going back to the what if it doesn't pass with regard to the aspect of the 10 years, I just wonder if you've got an opportunity there to make a statement with regard to what the implications of what the cost might be to Littleton residents in the event that, you know, it's 10 years out, et cetera. I'll leave it at that. I think directionally, I hope you know what I'm, referring to.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that was the only comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then the last slide, we've got 3 tour/info sessions lined up. One before the school year ends, one at the beginning of next school year, and one a little bit later in the fall. So right before the town meeting and town vote.
Marilee, I'm sorry, I had to jump off for a second. My computer was going to try to restart on me. Back to the other slide talking about the construction manager. Just so you know, this is a pretty lengthy process. We're getting to start right now. We've got to, fill out an application and with the state, there's a lot of information that has to go into this. And that's going to be happening, through the summer. Advertise, interview, select, all of that. So construction manager will be on board when we hit the ground running for design development. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into this, and we'll be, adding that as we go on the next few meetings and just updating everybody in the process.
That's all I had, and it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah, 8 o'clock. Next item was just a budget and schedule update from us. We're about 73% into the budget right now. I believe we have most of the information that's together from the environmental insight. We may have some more money coming in for that, but it's following right along with what's been budgeted. I believe we're about almost $800,000 spent out of the $1,085,000, but we have a few more months to continue through here, so things are looking well there. We've talked a bit on the schedule tonight. It is important with what's coming up, finishing schematic design, getting into the approval of the project going forward, getting the project scope and budget amendment by the end of August approved by the MSBA, and then moving forward with construction manager and getting into design development after that, after the votes at the town meeting and the override on November 1st. So everything is on schedule. I think, as you can see, everything is moving right along. There are some decisions and things that need to be made, but I believe everybody's on top of that. So that's kind of the update for budget and schedule. Any public comment? Item 5.
Before we do that, I think Meryl has a comment she wants to make.
Well, that was listed after public comment.
After public comment.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Steve, do we have anybody wanting to?
Nobody with their hand raised. No.
Okay, thank you.
And an item of new business, a Studio G staffing change.
So I've already talked to a few of you, and I've given my notice. Excuse me. I've given my notice at Studio G for a new opportunity. So just wanted to appreciate everybody here. You're in good hands with Gail, Marilee, Steve, Alyssa, and just wanted to let you know that Studio G is bringing someone on who's starting next week. So you will get to meet him, and he'll be part of the Shaker Lane team. So you'll be in excellent hands crossing the finish line. So Marilee and Steve and Gail and Alyssa all know where to find me should anything come up, and I'll be rooting from the sideline. So
Good luck to you.
Yeah,
thank you.
thanks.
Really a pleasure.
Best wishes.
Good luck,
All your work.
Meryl.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Happy for you, sad for us.
Mm.
Just so you know, as a note to that, Studio D does have to write a letter to the MSBA talking about a change in personnel.
Yeah,
Which is
Gail's
just-
working on that, so she'll have
Yeah,
that.
which is just a formality. They just need to know that a
Of
change has
course.
been made, but best of luck to you, Meryl.
Thank you. Really, really appreciate it, and all the best to everybody here.
All right.
Yep, you too.
Yeah, thanks, Mara.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other business, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Well,
Motion
one
to
thing,
adjourn.
Kelly, before we
Yep,
stop, just go back to the presentation for a sec. And so we'll start at 6. We probably have to cut out around 10 of
Mhm.
7 to get back to get everybody into town meeting. This presentation looks a little longer than I thought it would be. We just want to make sure we have enough time for questions, because there will be questions. The select board had a meeting last week on a different article, and it did not go over well. They had questions from the audience, and they basically got their ass handed to them.
Well, having sat through that 2-hour meeting, Steve, I have some suggestions about how we might conduct this one. So one of the thoughts that I wanted to offer to the group is that I would be willing to serve as sort of the moderator for this, because one of the things that became problematic in that particular meeting you were talking about was that the people who were giving the presentation didn't even have the time to finish the presentation. So I think if we're going to do this, that we need to say, when we do this, we'd say, okay, we're going to make the presentation. We'll ask that everybody please hold up your questions until afterwards. Please line up at the microphone. You've got 2 minutes to ask your question. Please be respectful of everybody else that is in the line behind you, and but put some controls on it. We're going to put you on timers, and I'm going to hold you to it. So again, I think we to make this successful, we have to put some parameters around it, and this is what I would offer to the crowd, because Steve makes a good point, and having sat through it, yeah, it's something we have to put some controls in place at this meeting beforehand.
This is probably the most important meeting we're going to have through this entire process.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to make it work. So
Rob has his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
So
Rob
thank
has his hand up. Go ahead, Rob. Make it.
Yes, thank you. Okay. The point I'd make, and I sat through that same presentation and agree with what's been said, I would suggest that you prepare for an overflow meeting at some date that you can come to agree, because I think you're going to be amazed how you're no way, even if you put parameters around the feedback, I don't think you're going to get through this given the length of the presentation that I just saw.
So Rob, that's why partially we're doing other presentations. So we're going to be doing that afterwards. We'll make that clear in the beginning as well. So we can't let perfect get in the way, get in the way good. So we understand that. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I think those 3 or 4 or 5 first slides can be very, very, very quick, because it's just an update of information people have seen before. Who's in the project, what it looked, you know what I mean? Like, we can get through those pretty quickly and then get to the meat of the meeting, the costs, and maybe what it looks like. And then we're hoping a 10 to 15 minute presentation, and then 30 plus minutes, 30, 40 minutes or 30 minutes of Q&A. It's never enough, but we'll try to, make the presentation as quick as possible.
Do we have time in our schedule to have a dry run for those that are presenting?
Yep, I think we should. And how many slides do we have, Mary Lee?
14.
14.
That includes the front slide and the back slide.
We have about a minute slide.
Since this is in person, we could potentially look into printing out the plans, the site plan and the floor plans and the den rendering. And that way people, as they're milling around, they can just look at that on their own, and we can take that out of the presentation.
Well, I leave it in the presentation in case anybody doesn't have one, but it's a good idea that they can take a look at it before it's shown on the big screen. But those, like I said, those 3 or 4 front slides, we can go through those in 10 seconds each. You know, like we want to leave as much time for Q&A. I get it. So
To Mark's point, where he says everyone's seen this before, I'm going to wager that 90% of the people attending this meeting have never seen it before.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Well, we will find out. All right. Anything else?
No, I'm good now.
All right. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Do we have a second?
Second,
Thank you.
moving on second.
Steve Moore?
Yes.
Steve Venuti?
Stephen Rudy, yes.
Ryan?
Ryan, yes.
Bob?
Bob Romley, yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Michelle?
Michelle Kane, yes.
And Kelly, yes. Thank you, everyone.